Okay, let's unpack this. We have all heard the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's the mantra of comfortable mediocrity in a way.
It is. It's safe. It's the philosophy that keeps the lights on, keeps the wheels turning. But today, we're diving into a concept that suggests that kind of thinking is actually pretty dangerous.
It's the idea that good is the enemy of great.
Exactly.
It's provocative opening, isn't it? It frames competence not as a stepping stone to something better, but as a barrier.
A barrier. I like that. It suggests that the reason we don't have truly great schools or great governments or great companies is precisely because we have, well, good ones.
hmm The comfort of being good, of hitting your targets, of being respectable, that's the trap. It's what stops us from ever becoming truly exceptional.
It's like the sedation of success. And to explore this, we are looking at one of the absolute titans of business literature today. We're doing a deep dive into Jim Collins's seminal book, Good to Great.
And I can hear some people thinking, oh, another business book.
Right. But this isn't just a collection of hunches or one CEO's opinion, is it?
Far from it. This book, which came out back in 2001, wasn't just some executive writing a memoir about how brilliant they are. No, this was the result of a massive, gritty, 5-year research project.
5 years. That's a serious commitment.
A huge commitment. Collins and his team, they weren't just looking for successful companies. They were coding thousands of articles, interviewing executives, and just crunching mountains of financial data to look for a specific, almost magical pattern.
And before we get into the data, which is honestly, it's mind-blowing, I have to share the story about Collins himself, because I think it really sets the tone for the integrity of this whole project.
The thought experiment on the cliff.
Yes. So you have to picture this. Jim Collins is standing on a cliff in El Dorado Springs Canyon, just south of his hometown in Boulder, Colorado. It's winter, there's snow everywhere, it's beautiful, but, freezing cold.
So he's having a moment of solitude to reflect on the work.
Exactly. He's deep into this research, and he poses this thought experiment to himself. He asks, how much would someone have to pay me to not publish this book?
Wow.
He imagines a negotiator standing there on the cliff with him. The offer starts at $1 million. Collins thinks, nope, I'd still publish. The number keeps going up. 10 million. 50 million. He finally lands on $100 million.
No, that is a life-changing amount of money. That is walk away and never work again. Money for most people.
It is. But standing there on that cliff, shivering in the cold, he realizes his answer is still no. He wouldn't take the money.
Incredible.
He realized his core identity is that of a teacher. He felt he had discovered a fundamental truth about how the world works, specifically how organizations transform from good to great, and he just couldn't resist the urge to share it. That's the level of conviction we're dealing with here.
And that teacher mentality is so crucial because the methodology here is what Collins calls the black box. He wanted to understand the inputs that lead to a specific output without any preconceived notions or biases.
Okay, let's talk about that output. Because usually when we talk about great companies, we just sort of list the ones we like, right? Apple, Google, whatever is popular at the moment. But they had a really strict definition. What exactly were they looking for?
They were searching for a very, very rare economic pattern. They scanned the entire stock market for companies that, for a full 15 years, performed at or even below the general market level.
So they were just average. They were good.
Good at best. Maybe they tracked the market, maybe they lagged a bit. They were completely unremarkable for a decade and a half.
Okay, so 15 years of mediocrity. That's a long time to just be, okay.
It is. But then they hit a transition point, a clear inflection. And for the next 15 years, their cumulative stock returns didn't just improve, they beat the general market by at least 3 times.
3 times the market
Actually,
for 15 years straight.
roughly 3 times, yes. In fact, to put a number on it, if you had invested just $1 in this basket of good to great companies, let's call them G2G companies, back in 1965, by the year 2000, that single dollar would have multiplied 471 times.
471 times. That is just staggering. That beats the general market. That beats GE in its heyday. It beats Intel.
It's an absolutely incredible return. And to make sure it wasn't just luck or, a rising tide lifting all boats, they used comparison companies. This is the key scientific control.
So for every company that made the leap.
For every company that made the leap, they looked at a similar company in the same industry with the same resources at the same time that didn't make the leap. And they also looked at companies that popped up for a moment, the unsustained comparisons,
Yeah.
and then flocked right back down to mediocrity.
So they were looking inside this black box to see what the difference was. Okay, Company A became a rocket ship. Company B, right next door, crashed and burned. Why?
Precisely. They looked at everything: strategy, leadership, culture, technology, you name it. And what they found inside that box often flew directly in the face of the conventional business wisdom of the time.
So that's our roadmap. We're going to break down these specific, often counterintuitive principles that Collins found inside that box. We're talking level 5 leadership, first who, then what, the Hedgehog Concept, all of it.
And it's important to remember, while we're talking about businesses here, Collins explicitly asks you, the listener, to apply these principles to your own life. So whether you're running a corporation, managing a nonprofit, or just trying to manage your own career path, there's absolutely something here for you.
All right, let's jump into the first big discovery. And honestly, this one shocked the researchers, didn't it? I mean, they explicitly said they didn't want to focus on leadership.
That's right. It's funny, Collins actually instructed his research team to downplay or even ignore leadership at first. He wanted to avoid the whole great man theory of history, this idea that success is just about having a charismatic, larger-than-life superhero at the top.
Because it feels too simple, right?
Yeah.
And not very repeatable.
Exactly. It's not a useful lesson if the answer is just be a genius. But the data wouldn't let them ignore it. It just kept showing up over and over again.
So what did it show them?
It showed that every single one of the G2G companies had a specific type of leader at the helm during that crucial transition period. But here's the kicker. It wasn't the type of leader you see on the cover of Forbes or Fortune magazine.
They called it level 5 leadership. Now, most of us think of leaders as the loud celebrity CEO types, the Lee Iacocca's of the world. But level 5 is different. Can you walk us through the hierarchy?
Sure. You can think of it as a pyramid with 5 levels. Level 1 is a highly capable individual, someone with talent, skills, good work habits.
Foundation.
Exactly. Level 2 is a contributing team member. They use their skills to help the team succeed. Level 3 is a competent manager, someone who can organize people and resources effectively to get things done.
Still pretty standard stuff so far.
Right. Then you get to level 4. This is what we usually think of as a leader, the effective visionary leader who can catalyze commitment to a clear vision and get everyone pulling in the same direction.
And honestly, most organizations would be thrilled to have a level 4 leader. That's already a huge win.
They absolutely would. But level 5 is something else entirely. This is the executive who builds enduring greatness. And the definition is a bit of a paradox. It's a strained blend of extreme personal humility and intense professional will.
Humility and will. That seems contradictory. You usually get the ego-driven tyrant who gets things done, or you get the meek, nice person who gets run over by the competition.
Exactly. That's the paradox. But the G2G leaders were both. They were incredibly ambitious, but, and this is the key, the ambition was for the company, for the cause, not for themselves.
And the classic case study for this is Darwin Smith of Kimberly-Clark.
Oh, he's the perfect example.
I love this description of him. The source describes him as this awkward old man. He wore these old suits that were completely out of fashion. He looked like he could be a librarian or a janitor. He was a former company lawyer. He just did not look or act like a typical CEO at all.
Not at all. And yet, beneath that quiet exterior, he had a ferocity that was just unmatched. When he took over, Kimberly-Clark was in a dying industry-coated paper mills. They were sinking fast. The stock had fallen 36% behind the market.
So he's facing a crisis.
A huge crisis.
Yeah.
And Smith looked at the brutal facts of the situation and made a decision that the business media at the time called less than intelligent. That's a direct quote.
He sold the mills, didn't he?
He sold the paper mills, the entire history of the company. He sold the actual mills in Kimberly, Wisconsin, the town the company was named after, and he took all that money and threw it into the consumer products division.
A huge bet.
A massive bet. He decided to go head-to-head with giants like Procter & Gamble and Scott Paper, with brands like Huggies and Kleenex.
That takes some serious guts. I mean, everyone must have thought he was crazy to challenge P&G directly.
They did. But he never wavered. That's the professional will part of the equation. He was absolutely determined. He knew they couldn't win in the paper mill business, but he believed they could win in consumer goods.
And the result?
The result was staggering. Kimberly-Clark eventually beat Procter & Gamble in 6 out of 8 product categories and went on to acquire Scott Paper outright. The company he inherited, which was dying, became an absolute giant. But if you met Darwin Smith on the street, you'd just think he was a quiet, eccentric grandfather.
There's a specific mechanism Collins describes for how these leaders handle success and failure. He calls it the window and the mirror. This one really stuck with me.
It's such a beautiful and simple metaphor for that lack of ego, for that humility. When things go well, when the company succeeds, level 5 leaders look out the window. They credit other factors. They credit luck. They credit their amazing team. They credit external circumstances. They explicitly do not credit themselves. They'll say things like, "We were just in the right place at the right time," or "The team did an amazing job on this."
It's a compelling kind of modesty.
It is. But then, when things go badly, when there's a failure or a setback, they look in the mirror. They blame themselves. They say, "I didn't prepare us well enough," or "I made a bad call." They take full 100% responsibility.
And the leaders of the comparison companies, the ones who failed to make their companies great, they did the exact opposite, right?
Precisely the opposite. The mediocre leaders looked in the mirror when things went well to say, "Look how brilliant I am," preening for the media and taking all the credit. And then they looked out the window when things went wrong to blame the market, the economy, or their incompetent employees. It was never their fault.
There's another amazing example of this ambition for the company, not the self idea, with David Maxwell at Fannie Mae.
This is such a powerful story of integrity. Maxwell took over Fannie Mae when it was losing $1 million every single day. He completely turned it around. Under his leadership, the stock just skyrocketed. So when he was set to retire, his retirement package, based on that performance, was valued at around $20 million.
And this caused a huge controversy in Congress, right? Because Fannie Mae is a government-chartered entity.
It did. Senators were outraged. There were hearings. It was a whole political firestorm. But instead of fighting for his share, which he had arguably earned by completely saving the company, Maxwell recognized that the controversy itself would hurt Fannie Mae's reputation.
So what did he do?
He voluntarily took only $5 million and instructed his successor to donate the rest, the other $15 million, to charities focused on low-income housing.
Wow. That is really walking the walk. He prioritized the company's reputation and its mission over $15 million of his own money.
That is level 5 leadership. The ambition is for the cause, for the institution, not for the ego or the bank account. He knew that if he took all the money, he damaged the very thing he spent years building.
So, okay, you have this humble but ferocious leader. What do they do first? The conventional wisdom is that a new CEO comes in, sets a new vision, announces a new grand strategy, and then hires people to execute it.
That's the strategy-first approach. It's what we see in movies. But Collins found the exact opposite. The principle is first who, then what.
Ah, the bus analogy.
The famous bus analogy. Before you figure out where you are driving the bus, that's the vision or the strategy, you have to get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and get the right people in the right seats. The people come first.
Why, though? Why does the who have to come before the what? I mean, it seems like you'd want to tell people where you're going to see who wants to come along for the ride.
It seems that way, but there are two main reasons this is so critical. First, adaptability. Think about it. If people join your company because of where it's going, let's say the vision is we're going to be the best typewriter company in the world, what happens when the market changes and you realize you need to make computers instead?
They might get disillusioned or just leave.
Exactly. The vision they signed up for is gone. But if they join because of who is on the bus, because they love the team, they respect the other people, they believe in the standard of excellence, they will stick with you and adapt, regardless of where the bus needs to go.
Okay, that makes sense. And the second reason?
Motivation. The right people don't need to be managed. They're self-disciplined. They're self-motivated. You don't need to dangle a carrot in front of them to get them to do great work. They are internally driven to produce the best results they can. It's a matter of character, not incentives.
The source mentions Wells Fargo and its CEO at the time, Dick Cooley, as the prime example of this. He was basically just a talent magnet.
He really was. Warren Buffett actually commented on this. He said Dick Cooley was just injecting an endless stream of talent into Wells Fargo. Cooley had this sense that the banking industry was going to change dramatically, but he couldn't predict exactly how. So what did he do?
He hired talent.
He hired outstanding people, even if he didn't have a specific job for them yet. He'd find someone brilliant and say, "I don't know what you'll do yet, but I know I want you on this bus."
And that paid off big time when the banking industry crashed and deregulated.
Right. It paid off huge. When the entire environment changed, when everything was chaotic, Wells Fargo had the sheer brain power on the bus to handle it better than anyone else. They were able to figure out the what as they went along, because they had already solved for the who.
You can contrast that with the model Collins calls the genius with 1,000 helpers.
Yes. This is the trap so many companies fall into. You have one superstar CEO, a genius. They make all the key decisions. Everyone else on the team is just a helper there to execute the genius's vision.
And the problem is obvious when you say it like that.
It's so fragile. What happens when the genius leaves, dies, or retires? The whole thing collapses because no one else knows how to drive the bus. It's a model that is completely unsustainable.
Now, a lot of people listening might assume that getting the right people just means paying the most money. But the research completely busted that myth, too.
It completely demolished it. They looked for a link between high executive compensation and the good to great transformation, and they found zero correlation. None.
So it's not about the money.
It's about who you pay, not how much you pay them. The right people will perform because it's in their DNA, is who they are. You can't turn the wrong person into the right person just by throwing a bigger bonus package at them.
But getting the right people on the bus also implies getting the wrong people off, and that can sound harsh. But Collins makes a really important distinction here between being ruthless and being rigorous.
This is a vital nuance. Ruthless in this context is hacking and slashing jobs indiscriminately when times get tough, just to save a buck. That's a culture killer.
So what's rigorous?
Rigorous means having consistently high standards at all times, in good times and bad. It means caring enough about the company and the great people on your team to not let mediocrity settle in. It's about making sure every seat is filled by someone who truly belongs there.
The research gave us 3 disciplines for being rigorous. I think they're super practical, so let's run through them. What was number 1?
Discipline 1. When in doubt, don't hire. Keep looking. This is sometimes called Packard's Law, from David Packard of HP. He argued that a company should limit its growth based on its ability to attract enough of the right people.
So if you grow revenue faster than you can get the right people, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Exactly. You'll have to compromise, you put the wrong people in seats, and the whole thing will eventually stagnate.
Okay, number 2.
Discipline 2. When you know you need to make a people change, act. Collins says the moment you feel the need to tightly manage someone, you've probably made a hiring mistake.
That's a great litmus test.
It is. The best people don't need to be managed. They need to be guided, taught, and led, but not managed like a problem. And keeping the wrong person on the bus is deeply unfair to all the right people who have to pick up the slack and compensate for them.
And number 3, which I think is brilliant, put your best people on your biggest opportunities, not your biggest problems.
This is so counterintuitive because most companies do the exact reverse. They see a failing division and they say, let's send our best manager over there to fix it.
Right, to put out the fire.
But that just saves you from failure. It doesn't build greatness.
Yeah.
You need your best minds, your best talent, working on the things that will make the company fly, not just the things that are preventing it from sinking.
And there's an interesting side effect of this first who approach. It can actually lead to a better work-life balance.
Surprisingly, yes. The book points to Coleman Mockler, the CEO of Gillette. He had a wonderful family life and famously refused to work on weekends. How did he do it?
He had the right people on the bus?
He hired people who didn't need micromanaging. If you have the right team in place, a team you can trust completely, you don't have to be a slave to the office because you know your people are going to execute with excellence.
Okay, so we have the leader, who is a level 5, and we have the team, which is composed of the right people in the right seats. Now we need to look at the reality of the situation. This brings us to the next big concept. Confront the brutal facts.
And this is, arguably the toughest part for many organizations. You have to be willing to look at the data, the market, the competition, and accept the truth, no matter how ugly or painful it is.
Collins implies a concept here called the Stockdale paradox. Can you explain that dynamic? It's a pretty heavy story, but work it.
It's very heavy. It's named after Admiral Jim Stockdale, who was the highest-ranking U.S. military officer in the Hanoi Hilton prisoner of war camp during the Vietnam War. He was tortured over 20 times, held in isolation, and had no idea if he would ever be released.
Unimaginable.
And the paradox is this. You must retain absolute, unwavering faith that you will prevail in the end. You can never lose that faith. But at the exact same time, you must confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be.
So you can't just be a blind optimist saying, oh, it'll all work out just fine.
No, in fact, that's dangerous. When Collins asked Stockdale, who didn't make it out of the camps, Stockdale said, oh, that's easy, the optimists.
The optimists, why?
Because they were the ones who would say, we're going to be out by Christmas.
Huh?
And Christmas would come and go. Then they'd say, we'll be out by Easter. And Easter would come and go. And eventually they died of a broken heart. You have to have the faith to prevail in the end and the discipline to face the brutal reality of your situation today.
And in the business world, the classic comparison for this is Kroger versus A&P in the grocery industry.
This is a perfect tale of two very different paths. Both were old, established companies, strongholds in their industry. But the world was changing. Americans didn't just want a place to buy groceries anymore. They wanted superstores, a pharmacy, banking, fresh food, everything under one roof.
And A&P just stuck their head in the sand.
They absolutely did. They tried to preserve the old traditional grocery model. They were in denial, thinking, hey, we've been great for 100 years, we'll be fine. They actually launched a branding campaign to try and make their old stores seem nostalgic.
That's a sure sign of denial.
It is. Kroger, on the other hand, confronted the brutal fact head-on. They admitted that the old grocery model was dead and that if they didn't change, they would die too.
And they acted on it. They completely transformed their stores into the superstores people wanted.
They systematically changed everything. It was painful. They closed hundreds of stores. They changed their entire supply chain. They redesigned their layouts. And the result, A&P crumbled into bankruptcy, and Kroger became the grocery giant we know today. One faced the facts, the other lived in the past.
But how do you create a culture where people are actually willing to tell you the truth? Because in most hierarchies, people are afraid to bring bad news to the boss.
That's the key question. And Collins outlines 4 practices to create that climate of truth. First, lead with questions, not answers.
So don't come in with a solution already in mind.
Right. Be like Alan Wurtzel at Circuit City. He would hold these meetings without an agenda and just ask questions. He wasn't trying to sound like the smartest person in the room. He was genuinely trying to understand the reality of the situation until the truth emerged.
Okay, what's the second practice?
Engage in dialogue and debate, not coercion. You want arguments. You want passionate, respectful arguments where people are debating the data to find the best answer. It shouldn't just be the CEO forcing their view down everyone's throat.
Number 3, conduct autopsies without blame.
This goes right back to the black box idea. When something goes wrong, a product fails, a strategy doesn't work, you analyze it rigorously to learn from it, not to find a scapegoat to fire. If people think they'll be punished for a mistake, they'll hide the mistake. If they think it's a learning opportunity, they'll share the data freely.
And fourth, build red flag mechanisms.
These are basically systems that force you to pay attention to critical data immediately, so you can't ignore it or explain it away. It makes the brutal facts unavoidable.
It all comes down to resilience. I think about Scott Paper versus Kimberly-Clark again. Scott Paper saw how dominant P&G was and basically gave up, settling for being a distant second place.
While Kimberly-Clark faced that same brutal fact that P&G was a monster competitor and used it as fuel, as a rallying cry to fight back and eventually win. Confronting the facts makes you stronger, not weaker.
Okay, so we've got our level 5 leader, our bus is full of the right people, and we've faced the brutal facts of our reality. Now we need a strategy. And this is where Collins uses that very famous parable, the hedgehog and the fox.
Yes, this comes from an essay by the philosopher Isaiah Berlin. The fox knows many things. It's cunning, complex, scattered. It pursues many different ends at once. The fox sees the world in all its baffling complexity.
And the hedgehog?
The hedgehog knows one big thing. It simplifies a complex world into a single, simple, organizing idea or principle.
In the parable, the fox tries a million clever ways to catch the hedgehog, but the hedgehog always does the same thing. It curls into a spiky ball and wins every single time. Simple beats complex.
Exactly. And Collins found that the good to great leaders are all hedgehogs. They aren't distracted by all the noise and complexity. They find one simple, crystalline concept and focus on it with relentless intensity. They pierce through the complexity to find the underlying simplicity.
To find this hedgehog concept, you have to identify the intersection of 3 overlapping circles. This is probably the most famous diagram from the book. Let's break down those 3 circles.
Okay, circle 1 is what you can be the best in the world at. And notice the very careful wording there. It's not what you want to be the best at. And it's not even just what you are good at right now. It's understanding, with brutal honesty, what you have the potential to be better at than anyone else.
And equally important, knowing what you cannot be the best at.
Critically important. If you can't be number 1 in the world, it shouldn't be your hedgehog concept. It requires a brutally honest assessment of your capabilities. Okay, circle two.
Circle 2 is, what drives your economic engine? You have to find the single metric, the one denominator that has the most impact. Profit per X.
And finding that X is key. For a company like Walgreens, they made a profound shift from thinking about profit per store to thinking about profit per customer visit. That one shift in the denominator changed everything about their strategy.
How so? Why does that metric matter so much?
Well, if you're focused on profit per store, you try to decrease costs within each store, and maybe you're careful not to open too many stores close together because it might cannibalize each other. But if you focus on profit per visit, you realize you just want people coming in all the time for any reason.
So convenience becomes the driver.
Convenience becomes everything. And Walgreens started clustering their stores. They'd put 2 stores just blocks apart. That strategy makes no sense if you're measuring profit per store, but it's brilliant for maximizing profit per visit because a Walgreens is now always the most convenient option.
Genius. Okay, and circle 3.
Circle 3 is what you are deeply passionate about. The people in the organization have to genuinely care about the work. You can't manufacture passion. You have to discover what actually lights your people up and align your strategy with that. It's not just about making money. It's about doing something you truly believe in.
So for Walgreens, the intersection their Hedgehog Concept was a deep passion for convenience, an economic engine driven by profit per customer visit, and the potential to be the best in the world at convenient drugstores.
Exactly. And once they found that incredibly simple, clear intersection, they just executed on it relentlessly for years.
And you can contrast that with Abbott Labs versus Upjohn in the pharmaceutical industry.
A great comparison. Abbott was brutally honest with themselves. They looked around and realized, you know what? We cannot be the best pharmaceutical research company in the world. Merck is just too good. They have too big a head start.
So they pivoted.
They diversified into areas like hospital nutrition and medical diagnostics markets where they saw they could be the best in the world. And they thrived.
And Upjohn
Stubbornly stayed the course, trying to beat Merck at a game they simply could not win. They never found their hedgehog concept, and they eventually got swallowed up by a bigger company.
It's so important to note that this isn't a goal you set or a strategy you invent. It's an understanding you discover through this process.
That's a crucial distinction. You don't decide to be the best. You look at the brutal facts and you discover what you're genetically encoded to be the best at. It's a process of inquiry that Collins says takes, on average, 4 years to get right.
Wow. So once you have that hedgehog concept, you need the discipline to stick with it and not get distracted. This brings us to the next phase, a culture of discipline.
This is where the magic really happens. Collins gives a simple formula: a culture of discipline plus an ethic of entrepreneurship, a kind of magical alchemy.
He makes a great point about bureaucracy. He says bureaucracy is basically just a tool created to manage the wrong people.
It's so true. If you've done the first who part right, if your bus is full of self-disciplined people who are motivated from within, you don't need a mountain of rules and procedures and hierarchy. You can give them freedom because you know they will act responsibly.
And bureaucracy kills that entrepreneurial spirit.
It suffocates it. But you need the discipline of the hedgehog concept to keep all that entrepreneurial energy pointed in the right direction. It provides freedom, but within a framework.
There's a matrix he describes in the book. You want to be in the quadrant with high discipline and a high ethic of entrepreneurship.
Right. And a huge part of that discipline is institutionalizing the stop doing list. Most of us and most companies have to-do lists that are a mile long. But the good to great companies were ruthless about their stop doing lists.
They cut out anything that didn't fit perfectly within the 3 circles of their hedgehog concept.
Exactly. Even if those things were profitable. Look at Pitney Bowes. They had a virtual monopoly on postage meters for decades. But their CEO, Fred Allen, realized they had to stop holding on to that old machinery identity. The future wasn't in machines, it was in back-office technology and services.
So they had to stop doing the thing that made them famous.
Yes. Even though postage meters were still making money, it didn't fit their future hedgehog. So they had the discipline to pivot away from their legacy business to build their future one. It takes immense discipline to say no to good opportunities that just aren't your opportunity.
That's the definition of strategic discipline right there.
It really is.
Speaking of opportunities, let's talk about technology. This book was written in 2001, right at the peak of the dot-com bubble and bust. Everyone was freaking out about the internet.
And Colin's finding here is just timeless. He asked a simple question. Does technology cause greatness? And the answer from the research was a hard, unequivocal no.
It's not the driver, it's something else.
It's an accelerator. Good to Jeets. Great companies never, ever use technology as the primary means of igniting a transformation. They use technology to accelerate momentum they have already built. They avoid fads and bandwagons.
And the classic comparison here is drugstore.com versus Walgreens.
Oh, perfect. Drugstore.com was the darling of the bubble. They were all hype, backed by Amazon. Their strategy was get big fast. Their stock spiked to billions in value, but they had no sustainable business model. They were just reacting to the technology hype, thinking the tech itself was the strategy.
And Walgreens. The media was calling them dinosaurs, right? Left behind.
Totally. But Walgreens didn't panic. They used a crawl, walk, run approach. They experimented carefully with the internet to figure out how it could enhance their convenience hedgehog concept. When they finally launched their web strategy, it was perfectly integrated with their physical stores. You could order online and pick it up at the drive-thru minutes later.
They used the technology to accelerate their existing strategy.
Exactly. And they crushed the pure dot-coms because they used tech strategically, not fearfully. That fear of being left behind is what drives the mediocre companies to make bad, reactive decisions. The great companies act out of thoughtfulness and purpose.
If the technology fits your three circles, you become a pioneer in applying it. If it doesn't, you have the discipline to ignore it, even if everyone else is hyping it up.
That's the key. You don't just adopt tech because everyone else is doing it.
Okay, so putting all of this together, the level 5 leadership, the right people, facing the brutal facts, finding the hedgehog, maintaining a culture of discipline, it creates this powerful phenomenon that Collins calls the flywheel.
This is my favorite image in the entire book. It's so visceral. Imagine a giant, heavy metal flywheel. It's 5,000 pounds mounted on an axle. Your job is to get it spinning.
It's going to be hard at first.
Incredibly hard. You put your shoulder to it and you push, and it moves maybe an inch. You regroup, you push again, and it completes one single, slow, grinding turn. It's exhausting, unglamorous work.
But you keep pushing, and you keep pushing in the same direction.
Always in the same direction. And eventually, momentum starts to build. One turn becomes 10 turns, then 100. And then at some point, the weight of the wheel itself starts working for you. It spins faster and faster, and the momentum becomes almost unstoppable.
And from the outside, the media or the public looks at it and says, wow, an overnight success, a breakthrough, a miracle moment.
But the people inside, the ones who were pushing, they know there was no miracle moment. There was no single big push. It was the cumulative effect of consistently pushing in one clear direction, the hedgehog direction, over a long, long period of time. It's the summation of thousands of small wins.
And the opposite of this is what he calls the doom loop.
The doom loop is just as powerful, but in a destructive way. It's what happens when companies try to skip the slow, hard work of building up the flywheel. They launch a splashy new program with a big press conference and huge fanfare.
But when the results aren't immediate because the flywheel is heavy and takes time to move, they get disappointed.
They get disappointed, they panic, they stop, they change direction completely, and they launch a new splashy program.
The book uses Warner Lambert as an example.
A perfect example.
Right.
They changed their core strategy every year or two.
Yeah.
First, they were going to be a consumer goods company, then a healthcare company, then back to consumer goods. They were pushing the flywheel one way for a year, then stopping, running around to the other side and pushing it the other way. You never, ever build momentum that way. You just expend a ton of energy and get nowhere.
And acquisitions fit into this model, too. The good to great companies use acquisitions after the flywheel is already spinning fast to accelerate it even more.
Whereas the doom loop companies try to buy other companies to create momentum from scratch. They think a big, splashy acquisition will be the miracle moment that gets their flywheel going, and that almost always fails. You can't buy your way to a flywheel. You have to build it.
As we start to wrap up this framework, Collins makes an interesting connection. He says that good to great is effectively the prequel to his previous best-selling book, Built to Last.
That's right. You could think of it this way. Good to Great is the book about how you get the flywheel spinning from a dead stop. Built to Last is about how you keep that flywheel spinning for decades or even centuries and turn a great company into an enduring institution.
And the key to that endurance is having a core ideology.
A core ideology, which is made up of core values and a core purpose that never, ever change. Like the H.P. way, a deep-seated respect for the individual and for technical contribution. Those are values that are timeless.
But at the same time, you have to stimulate progress.
Yes, you preserve the core ideology, But you change everything else, your practices, your strategies, your products. And you set what he calls BHAs, big, hairy, audacious goals, that are aligned with your three circles to keep pushing forward. It's that dynamic of preserving the core while stimulating progress.
So, to recap the whole journey we've been on, it starts with level 5 leaders who get the right people on the bus, who then confront the brutal facts to find their hedgehog concept, which they pursue with a culture of discipline accelerated by technology to create unstoppable momentum in the flywheel.
It's a beautiful, comprehensive, and interlocking system. You can't just do one part and expect it to work. They all support each other.
But here's the lingering question for me, and probably for a lot of people listening: why? Why bother trying to be great? Isn't being good, being successful enough? It seems like a lot of incredibly hard work to do all of this.
Collins addresses this head on, and I think his answer is beautiful. He argues that it is actually not harder to be great than to be good.
How can that be?
Because being good or mediocre is draining. It's exhausting. It involves all the soul-crushing bureaucracy to manage the wrong people. It involves the lurching from crisis to crisis in the doom loop. That is truly exhausting work.
Whereas greatness
Simplifies things. When you have the right people on the bus and a crystal clear focus, the work becomes energized. The flywheel starts to carry you. And, more importantly, if you are doing work you love and are passionate about, that third circle, then settling for just good is deeply unsatisfying. It feels like you left your potential on the table.
So it really comes down to a search for meaning, not just success.
It does. And Collins ends the book with a challenge, really a provocative thought for all of us. He asks you to consider your own life. If you find yourself asking the question, why should I try to be great? He suggests that perhaps you're just in the wrong seat on the bus. Maybe you haven't found your personal hedgehog yet.
That's a heavy thought to leave people with.
It is. Because his final conclusion is that greatness is not a function of circumstance. It's not about being lucky or being born at the right time. It turns out greatness is largely a function of conscious choice.
A matter of choice. I think that's the perfect place to leave it. You have the choice to confront the facts, to find your hedgehog, to start pushing your own flywheel.
The only question is, will you?
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.